You can see behind me the McLean House. This was actually a house that was completely taken apart. It was bought by people who wanted to turn it into a tourist attraction, or at least some kind of a monument, and move it to Washington, D.C. The house was disassembled and was a pile of lumber and bricks, and lay here because the developers of the concept actually ran out of money and couldn't make it happen. In essence, though, the thing was finally gotten by the Park Service, and the house behind me was reconstructed by the Park Service and opened and dedicated in 1950, with about 18,000 people making the trip from absolutely everywhere to this place, which was in the middle of nowhere. There are a number of other buildings here. There is the village, of course, that we have seen earlier, and the things that we see here in the village are all mostly reconstructions. Some of them are outright reconstructions, or rather renovations. The behind the house is a kitchen and some other facilities of that sort. This used to be the main way to get from here to anywhere else. And so behind me now you can see parts of the road. This was the road that was actually the main highway to get around here until the house was finally reconstructed and the Park Service was declared and opened in 1950.
General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia faced Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant's federal armies along a 37-mile siege line that extended from north of Richmond to south of Petersburg. By early spring 1865, Lee's army of 60,000 was on half rations and dependent upon supplies delivered by railroads. Grant's well-supplied armies of 120,000 had by this time captured 3 of the 4 railroads that furnished supplies to Confederate forces in Petersburg. During the last rainy days of March, Grant sent 21,000 troops toward 5 forks to sever the South Side Railroad. Lee countered with a force of 11,000. On April 1st, Federals attack at 5 Forks. The Confederates are outflanked. 2,200 are captured, and the South Side Railroad is threatened. Grant's troops make successful assaults against the Petersburg defenses and sever the South Side Railroad. Federal troops enter Richmond and Petersburg. Lee's army spends the full day in retreat, with Grant's army in pursuit. A cavalry engagement occurs at Namazine Church. Lee camps for the night at Hebron Church. Grant meets with Lincoln in Petersburg and camps at Sutherland Station. Lee's forces begin to converge on Amelia Court House, but expected rations never arrive. Federal troops, commanded by General Sheridan, reach Jetersville, blocking Lee's route south. Other Federal soldiers begin repairing the South Side Railroad. Lee spends the night at Amelia Court House, and Grant is at Wilson Station. While Lee attempts to concentrate his scattered commands, the army forages. Federal cavalry capture a Confederate wagon train near Paynesville. Unable to move south, Lee's army marches west toward Amelia Springs. Lee bivouacs at Amelia Springs. Grant was at Nottoway Courthouse, but goes to Jetersville for the night. The Battle of Sailor's Creek cost Lee 7,700 casualties. 8 generals, including Corps Commander Lieutenant General Richard Ewell and Lee's son Custis, are captured in heavy fighting. Lee rides toward Farmville. Grant camps at Burkeville. Fighting erupts at Cumberland Church. Grant sends Lee a note asking for his surrender to avoid further bloodshed. Lee refuses, but asks Grant's terms. That night, Lee continues the retreat westward to secure supplies at Appomattox Station. Grant spends the night at Farmville. The Army of Northern Virginia, now numbering approximately 30,000, arrives at Appomattox Court House. 3 miles ahead, at Appomattox Station, supply trains await the Army. That evening, Sheridan's cavalry captures the trains and moves towards Appomattox Court House, blocking Lee's avenue of escape. Lee establishes his headquarters near Appomattox Court House and holds his last council of war. Grant rests at Clifton. On the morning of April 9th, the final battle begins. Surrounded by approximately 63,000 federal soldiers, Lee agrees to meet with Grant. In the afternoon, General Lee surrenders to General Grant the home of Wilmer McLean.